So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the LF Energy webinar series. This is the third webinar in this series that we've had so far. Today we'll be talking about OperatorFabric, presented by RTE, by Alexandra and Hanae from RTE. I wanted to at first go over a few of the aspects of this webinar software and then give a little overview of LF Energy for those who aren't familiar with it. So in this webinar, this is run by Zoom, and it's pretty easy to operate. There's a Q&A function, and if you want to, you can also contact me through the chat. You can also raise your hand. I believe there's a function if you hover over your name in the chat, in the participants window, you can raise your hand and I will know to contact you through the chat. What we normally do is save questions to the end, but you can actually ask the questions at any time on either the chat or in the question and answer box, and we will make sure to get to those before the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, so that we'll have it up on the LF Energy website in the next few days. And with that, I think we can just start rolling. So the questions that a lot of people ask me about LF Energy is, what is it? And Shuli likes to start. Shuli is our executive director. She likes to start with this diagram. This is a diagram of the internet. It is a very large map, and as you can see, there are many interconnections. It looks like almost like a neurological diagram. And this is something that did not entirely grow organically. It was really guided, and it was driven very much in large part by the advent and proliferation of open source software. And with our aging grid around the world, the reason why we started LF Energy was because we felt we needed to leverage the same design principles for the energy grid and for energy systems around the world that we used to scale the internet up from just a few nodes in the 1970s and 80s all the way up to the very large diagram that we see here. And we felt that the Linux Foundation was really the ideal place to locate this, because it really is the world's largest shared technology investment. Linux is obviously a global project, and it touches just about every industry on the planet. It's many tens of billions of dollars in revenue and investments around the world. And the Linux Foundation is the curator for this, as well as 190 other projects. The mission of the LF Energy Foundation is to accelerate this vision of the grid of the future. Right now, the grid is very tightly coupled systems. A lot of it is proprietary. A lot of it does not have telecommunications built into it. And the vision that we have of the future is loosely coupled systems that are resilient, manageable, and observable. Those are all very carefully chosen adjectives. We want to create robust automation, digitalization of energy systems that enable engineers to make high-impact changes and to automate those changes. And this is all able to be done with software today that is being developed. And we think it's very important that it be developed in an open source context. And so that is the mission of LF Energy and the foundation. LF Energy currently maintains 6 different projects that are related to this, and we hope to bring many more on over the next 6 to 12 months. Most industries today run primarily on open source modules and APIs, and that is a bold statement, but it is absolutely true. You can find it in every sector in the world. One of the things that I like to pull out during talks like this is just to imagine how many open source systems you contact just by watching this webinar. I know that just between myself and Zoom, which is the software that's running this, there are probably at least 24 computers and network devices and shared intercommunication devices that are almost all running Linux. And that's a very powerful statement, and I think that we can really take those concepts into the energy sector. So these are the current projects within LF Energy. This is a diagram that sort of encapsulates the energy sector in terms of markets, generation, transmission, distribution, residential uptake of that power, commercial and industrial controlling. There's also certainly cybersecurity is a very important part of that, and then data, the data that measures the metrics for all of these systems. And all of these things are, you can see where we're starting to fill in some of these gaps with these various projects. The one that we're going to talk about today with control room coordination is called OperatorFabric. And with that, I think I would like to introduce Alexandra and Hanae from RTE and let them take over the conversation.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Can I just share my screen?
Yes.
How it works? Okay. So, sorry, I'm trying to do that, but it won't let me.
There it is.
Great. Sorry about that. So, hi everyone. My name is Alexandra Guirronet, and I work for RTE. And I've been lucky enough to work as a developer on OperatorFabric for the better part of a year now. And so I'll be doing the presentation today together with Hanae. Hello, everybody. And Hanae is our product owner for OperatorFabric. So as Jeffrey has told you where OperatorFabric fits in the bigger picture of LF Energy project portfolio, we just thought we would start for today by giving you a little more detail about what it is that OperatorFabric does in practice and where it comes from. Then we'll go on with a short demo from a real-life use case, because we have a few projects here in RTE that are using OperatorFabric. That will be a nice transition to the next section, because these projects are waiting for the future releases of OperatorFabric for their own roadmap. And then we'll end the presentation by talking a little about joining the community, and we'll give you a quick tour of what we have in terms of resources and documentation for the community. I hope that's okay with you, but you can't really answer actually, sorry. So we'll just go on. I'll start with a short word about RTE, because I think you're going to need it to better understand the use case that we're going to discuss. RTE stands for Réseau de Transport d'Électricité, which is basically the French transmission system operator, or TSO. And I'll just give you a few facts about it, because TSOs tend to come in all shapes and forms, and can be quite diverse in size and missions. Well, for RTE, RTE is in charge of the largest network in Europe, with 100,000 kilometers of high voltage and extra high voltage lines, 2,600 substations, and a peak load served of more than 100 gigawatts. And its missions are also quite broad compared to maybe other TSOs, because they cover asset management, electricity flow management, and also grid access management. So where does OperatorFabric fit in all this? OperatorFabric started out as part of an RTE project to help operators in charge of the network that I've just told you about. It came from the realization that because we were getting better at monitoring the network, for example, we had more data to process, which is good, but because it means more data to make better decisions, but it can be difficult to process. The decision processes were also getting more complex, because there were more parties involved, and also Maybe the rules were getting more complex. Some came from Europe. Well, variety of factors meant that this was more difficult. Also, they had to cooperate across wider territories. For example, because the network is linked with the network of other countries, they had to cooperate with TSOs from other countries, and also new participants, because now we cooperate with DSOs, for example, distribution system operators, and also because little by little, a lot of the processes are getting automated. It means that some participants in this cooperation might actually just be machines. So the solution to all that was to develop some kind of autopilot by automating all these processes little by little and chaining them together. The idea being that while everything is running smoothly, the operator doesn't have to focus on the processes, but his attention is only called if something goes wrong. But to do that, we needed to provide them with some kind of dashboard or control panel to oversee and act on these processes. The idea being to give them not all the information in the world, but just the right information at the right time to act on it. And now that I've said that, I think you can see how this is actually a concern that might translate quite easily in any utility company, for example. So that became quite clear that the solution could address a much wider range of use cases, anywhere where you require hypervision and cooperation. So that's what led to the decision to turn it into an open source project with LF Energy. So how did that go? Well, we kept the idea, but kind of started from scratch, because you can't design your code the same way if you're just doing a single-use application or if you're designing it as a platform. So we started again with a different mindset, but we did learn from what we had done the first time, and that's how OperatorFabric was born. So now we're going to play bingo. No, I'm just kidding. It's just meant as a memo of all the OperatorFabric key concepts that I want to talk to you about, and so I'm sure I don't forget any of them. But I think it's nicer if I just explain them using the OperatorFabric interface. So this is just a mock, but it's pretty similar to the actual interface, I think, as you will see in the demo. So we'll start with the operator, because he's the one, he or she is the one we're trying to help. To do their job, the operator has to interact with a lot of processes, and by interact I mean give inputs to these processes, watch for alerts, and other activities. But this can prove quite difficult, especially if there are many of them, and if these processes are scattered in many different applications. And that's how they end up with this. That's what a control room looks like right now. That works, but you can see that the operator are trying to focus their attention on a good dozen of computer screens, because they have to have an eye on a lot of applications, because to make sure that there are no alerts. So it's really difficult to focus on anything more complex. So the idea is to bring all this information, to make it kind of a digest of the information into a single interface, and to allow the operator to act from this interface. So the way we did it is that every process instance is materialized by a card. So the cards are the little things that you can see here. And every time the state of the process instance changes, the card gets updated. The cards, you can see that they're organized into what we call a feed. They're ordered by they're sorted according to their severity and their period of relevance. The severity is what you can see with the different colors. Right now we've defined 4 severity levels. Red is alarm, so that means the process needs immediate attention from the operator, for example, something that's stopping your production line. Orange is action, so the process requires an action or an input from the operator. For example, let's say that the application anticipates that a problem could occur tomorrow and needs the operator to come up with a solution by then. Question in green is quite similar to orange because, but the only difference is that the input or action is optional. So maybe the application anticipated that a problem could occur tomorrow, but some algorithm came up with a plan B. So the operator can enter a different solution if they have a better idea, but it's not mandatory. And blue is notification, so it's just plain information, no action or input expected from the operator. For example, production forecasts for next week are ready, and the card can either contain highlights of the report or a link to the full data set. But please keep in mind that these are only examples, as it is up to the publishing applications, what we call third-party applications, to decide how these map to their actual processes and what critical or immediate means to them. So we really tried to keep the definitions of this severity level as broad as possible, so it can fit most needs. I think we're good regarding the card feed. Oh no, the little buttons that you can see here are, you can use them to filter the feed based on the severity of the cards or the period of relevance, but we are planning to add more filters later on. Also, you can see that if you click on a card on the right, on the right pane, a card detail gets displayed. This card detail is meant to display more data about the state of the process, to give the necessary data to the operator so they can make a decision and decide on an action. The way this works is that the publishing application is going to provide what we call a template to OperatorFabric as part of its configuration. And this template, we're going to talk about into a little more detail in a later webinar, but the idea is that it's a flat file with placeholders for the actual data that's going to tell OperatorFabric how to render the card. And we're not just talking about fonts or colors. You can do pretty complex stuff with them. I'm going to give you an example. So that's from another project using OperatorFabric. I won't go into the specifics, but the idea is that this process is about gathering files from multiple countries and processing and merging them. And what this card detail is doing here is that it's telling each country how they're doing and which files are okay and which files they need to fix or submit again. So you can see that you can do pretty complex stuff with the templates. Right now, they have to go back to the main application to submit the files or fix the files. But of course, the idea is that soon they'll be able to do it from the OperatorFabric interface using actions. So I think we're good with card details. Let me see. The timeline. We'll soon, we can't show it yet, but we'll soon have a timeline view, which is going to be complementary to the feed view, because the idea with the feed is to have some kind of to-do list, whereas with the timeline, the idea will be more to give the operator a view of what maybe what his workload is going to be for the next week or the next month. You can also see that we have archives at the top. Every card and every state every update gets stored. So the archives will allow you to get the history of a given process instance, and this can be quite useful if you're trying to understand how a decision was reached, or maybe what the bottlenecks in your processes are. I think I said it all regarding the interface, but do let me know if there's anything that's not clear. So, what's the added value of using OperatorFabric? Well, from a business point of view, I think you can probably relate to the use cases that I've told you about just before. So, if you're in the same situation where you have way too much data, where to use it efficiently, and you would much rather have the appropriate data at the right time, well, that's where OperatorFabric can help, because it's going to aggregate the information from multiple sources in a single interface and allow actions to be performed from this interface. And this is what will allow the users to focus on the tasks that need their attention. And that will make operators more, that will enable them to focus on more complex tasks. And it will also make cooperation between operators more efficient and trustable through what we call card forwarding. Well, that's something I didn't mention, but, oh, sorry. The idea is that maybe an operator will receive a card and he'll be able to deal with it himself, but maybe not. And if he needs help from someone else, he can just forward the card to this other operator, maybe from another company, maybe even on a different OperatorFabric instance. And this is good because it's way better than what's being used today as in control rooms, which is phone calls and emails, which are not really reliable if there's a crisis, for example, and not very trustable. And what's the value from an IT point of view? Well, the first thing is that because of the way OperatorFabric is designed, no assumptions are made on the processes that are publishing the cards to OperatorFabric. And that's good because you could, for example, have 3 companies working on the same process. And maybe in the first company, this process is managed by a Java application. Maybe in another company, it's a business process management engine. And maybe in the third company, because it's smaller or new, it's still done with pen and paper. Well, that's all okay, because as long as they can all send cards to OperatorFabric, which is just a call to a REST API, they can work together, even if they have different work habits or different maturity levels regarding the process. Also, we are really striving to make integration very easy on the part of third-party applications with as little code as possible and mostly configuration. And thanks to this configuration, OperatorFabric is able to handle the dispatching logic and the rendering of the cards. And we've seen that it's good because it means that cards contain structured data rather than a blob of HTML content, which is good if you intend to do anything with this data. It's going to be easier to use. A short word about our technology stack and architecture, but we'll probably devote an entire webinar or something else to the subject. You can see that we're using open technologies and platforms for development, integration, and delivery. You can even look at our pipeline online if you want to. Regarding the architecture, OperatorFabric is built using microservices. This is because we couldn't make any assumption on the needs of the projects that are going to use OperatorFabric. And indeed, these needs might be quite different from one project to the next. So we decided to use microservices so the project can just decide how they want to scale each service depending on their needs, and maybe even opt out of some of the services altogether. Also, one of the projects that is using OperatorFabric has been successfully deployed using Kubernetes. Just so you know, I think with this we can go on to the demo. So just a little bit of context about the use case that we're going to see. Don't worry, I'm no expert, so I won't go into the specifics, but here's what you need to know. The name of the project is SEA. It's an RTE project, and the aim of this project is to ensure network security for the short-term future by basically anticipating the problems that we might have and finding and validating a strategy to overcome these issues. The way that works is we start with a forecast of the state of the network. For example, for next Monday at 3 p.m. So that's what you can see here with the blue dots for production and yellow for consumption and the lines in between them. For example, you can see you will also see which lines are scheduled for maintenance and well, everything you need to know about the network for Monday at 3 p.m. And then you're going to run calculations on this network state to make sure that the power flow in each of the lines is going to be below its maximum capacity. Oh, by the way, these calculations that I'm telling you about, you're going SEA does them using modules from another LF Energy project called Possible, and the next webinar is about Possible if you want to find out more about it. So after these calculations, you're going to get a list of issues. For example, the flow on line X, would be above its maximum capacity. And then the job of the operator, but also of the SEA software, is to find a remedial action. So that's basically a change in the configuration of the network, some kind of patch, that would make the power flow okay everywhere. To make sure that it is so, we run the calculations again, and everything is okay. But they don't stop here. They actually wonder about what if scenarios. What if line Y gets struck by lightning and we can't use it? And then the same happens. We run calculations, we get a new list of issues, we have to find new remedial actions, run calculations again, and everything is good. But they don't just do one what if scenario, they do 12,000 of them, so that's a lot. And all the remedial actions that the operator selected using the SEA software and validated, it's a strategy for Monday at 3 p.m. But once he's done it for Monday 3 p.m., he has to do it for Monday 4 p.m., 5 p.m., well, for every timestamp in the period that is in charge of. So you can see that's quite a lot of work. But that doesn't stop here, because I don't know if you remember, but I said that the calculations are based on production and consumption forecasts. And this forecast, they're going to get updated, because maybe we get a new weather forecast, and this is going to mean more wind production. Maybe people will turn on their AC, well, plenty of things. So if the input changes, maybe the output will change on some of the calculations. For example, maybe some of my strategy isn't valid anymore. I have to find a new remedial action. Here you can see that's just a massive amount of data to recon with, and well, the job is really difficult because I'm trying to find a strategy for the future, but the future keeps changing. So obviously, I'm not interested in all the calculation results in the application. I'm just interested in what's going to change my strategy. and otherwise it's too difficult to handle. And that's where OperatorFabric comes in. So I'm going to show you. Can you see the video right now? Good. So I'm sorry, this is a video, but it's our first try with the Zoom setup, so we wanted to make sure this couldn't go wrong. So what you can see here is not the SEA application, it's the OperatorFabric, well, their OperatorFabric-based dashboard. And this is only the dashboard for an operator in charge of a pretty small area. That's why there's not many cuts, but it's good for our demo. Sorry, it's in French. Well, the way they decided to aggregate their data is to basically have one card for all scenarios with the same status. So, for example, if we click here, the green card shows all the scenarios for which there are issues, but we found and validated a strategy for all of them. Okay, so there you can see that it will click on one of the scenarios. There was one issue, but we had a remedial action, so all's good. On the other end of the spectrum, in red, here is a card of all the scenarios. Fortunately, there's only one, with issues for which we have absolutely no strategy at all. So that's where the operator should focus his or her attention first. And orange is kind of in between. We have a strategy, but the operator has to take a second look at it before the time comes. So that was another example of an RTA project that uses OperatorFabric. What they're planning for the future is that right now, the idea how it's supposed to work is that the operator will find and validate a strategy in the SEA application, and the cards are going to get updated. And each time he does it, the cards gets updated. And the idea is that in the end, he should only be left with one green card holding all scenarios and its strategy for all scenarios. But once this is done, maybe with the next forecast, some of the strategy won't be valid, so you'll get a new orange card, and I'll fix it. Well, you get the idea. Right now, he or she has to do the fixing in the main SEA application, but the idea is, of course, that in the future, they'll be able to do it from OperatorFabric. And another thing they're interested about is to be able to forward some of the cards to be able to collaborate with maybe other countries, other TSOs. So, but that's the good thing is that we actually have that in our roadmap, as Hanae is going to tell you.
Well, thank you, Alexandra, for this demo. I am Hanae Safi. I'm the product owner of OperatorFabric, and I would like to give you an overview of how the team works and what we are planning to achieve during the next few months. We will also explain how to join the community. So to develop OperatorFabric, we have adopted Scrum Agile methodology because we believe that it will help us greatly to design and provide the right product, and also to get quickly feedbacks from end users. So each sprint lasts 3 weeks and leads to a release. The next release is planned for June the 17th. Concerning our backlog, to be honest today, it is mostly filled with user stories from RTE projects that are using OperatorFabric, such as Let's Coordinate, whose go-live date is scheduled on March 2020. Concretely, in the upcoming releases, we will propose new features like accessing to archived cards. We'll also give the users the possibility to personalize their settings. We'll define actions so user can act on processes directly from OperatorFabric, and so on. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. In addition to that, we aim to enhance the user interface design to offer a better user experience. Cybersecurity matters to us as well. We want to ensure that OperatorFabric is protected as much as possible from any malicious threats. For that purpose, we are planning an IT security audit, and we will put into practice afterwards all the recommendations made by the security experts. I want also to mention that we are testing the implementation of BPM workflow engine. We will tell you more about that in the future, and it might be the subject of one of the oncoming webinars. Well, if you wish to go further and discover OperatorFabric, you can find all the documentation on our website.
That's the website.
Yeah. Well. The source code is available on GitHub, and Docker images are available on Docker Hub for each web microservice. In addition to that, we'll propose soonly jars on Maven Central. Currently, our community is composed of RT's project team and Aprico, a Belgian consulting company. We are working together on BPM issues. Of course, we will be delighted to welcome new members. In RT, we believe deeply in the power of open source communities and its potential to improve OperatorFabric. For that reason, anyone can join us and take part in the project. Thus, if you want to become a member of our community, you can contribute in many aspects. For instance, by helping to improve documentation. As I said a few moments ago, our documentation is available on OperatorFabric website. You can read it and raise issues if something is wrong or not clear enough. And if you feel comfortable, you can enrich it as well. Even if RT is a French TSO, our documentation is exclusively in English. You can help us reach the maximum and the users around the world by proposing content such as tutorials or starter guides or documentation in other languages. You can help the community by reporting bugs. In RTE, our motto is quality. That's why for OperatorFabric, several types of tests such as unit, assembling, or acceptance tests have been implemented. But, importantly, perfection doesn't exist. So if you come across any bug, please report it to the community on Mattermost. You are also welcome to submit suggestions for new features, because new ideas can come from everywhere. We are open to discuss it and to improve OperatorFabric. So if you have any propositions, do not hesitate to come forward and join us on our Mattermost channel. Finally, you can, of course, make a code contribution and track it as GitHub pull request. So all the contribution guidelines that I'm presenting now are detailed on GitHub and in the contributing section. So that brings us to the end of our webinar. To wrap up, I would like to say that we truly believe in OperatorFabric and its potential and its ability to help operators perform their daily tasks with efficiency. OperatorFabric is still in its beginning. Everyone is welcome to join us to be part of the adventure to make it fit a large audience in many fields. On behalf of RTE and OperatorFabric team, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I suggest to move to Q&A session. Alexandra and I will be pleased to answer your question. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So for all attendees, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them into the question and answer, or let me know and I can unmute you. Give people a moment to come up with some questions, if there are any. Doesn't look like it. So if not, then I think we can close out. If there are any further questions afterwards, please feel free to contact me or to contact the folks who are working on OperatorFabric. I'd be happy to answer questions. And if that's it, then I guess we will be finished. Thank you very much to all people for calling in, and thank you very much to RTE and to Alexandra and Hanae for a great presentation.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending.